Welcome to today's explainer. Look, I know if you're a busy executive or a store owner tuning in, your time is incredibly valuable. So we're keeping this strictly focused on the bottom line. Today, we are conducting a high-level briefing on your e-commerce store's infrastructure. We're going to look at the exact server-level decisions that dictate your revenue ceiling, your conversion rates, and your brand's visibility heading into 2026. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the bottom line up front. You might be spending absolute thousands on marketing and conversion rate optimization, but hidden infrastructure flaws are likely causing massive cart abandonment right under your nose. Not only that, they're actively causing AI search engines to skip your store entirely. In today's explainer, we're going to show you exactly why that is happening, and more importantly, how to fix it right at the foundation. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover the 2026 revenue trap, compare blogs versus active stores, outline the 5 pillars of infrastructure, uncover the bad neighbor effect, and leave you with a 2026 readiness checklist. Let's start with Section 1, the 2026 revenue trap. The fundamental truth of modern e-commerce, and a lot of people miss this, is that your infrastructure, not your plugins, dictates your store's ultimate performance and your revenue ceiling. Most store owners don't even realize they're caught in this trap. Think about it. The average WooCommerce store today runs 25 to 40 plugins. It serves high-resolution product images and processes payments through live third-party gateways. Customers absolutely expect checkouts to finish in under 2 seconds, yet an overwhelming number of these dynamic stores are running on generic shared hosting environments that were essentially designed to host a static blog back in 2018. When you rely on that old infrastructure, your cart abandonment rates climb the very second promotional traffic hits, and your product pages fail Google's Core Web Vitals, completely dragging your rankings down below your competitors. Moving on to Section 2, blogs versus active stores. To really understand why standard hosting fails your growth, we need a foundational mental model. And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference. On the left, we have blogs. They are essentially static digital brochures. Once a page is cached, the server simply hands over the exact same HTML file over and over again. It really doesn't matter if you have 10 visitors or 10,000, the server load remains predictably low. But on the right, your WooCommerce store is a dynamic cash register. Every single visitor has a user-specific cart. Your store is doing live math for taxes based on varying shipping addresses, and most importantly, your checkouts cannot be cached. Every single interaction there demands live, real-time processing. To put a real number on that processing demand, a single uncached product page might run up to 150 complex database queries per visitor. That's for one page. When you have hundreds of shoppers hitting your site at the exact same time, your server needs incredible speed and power to handle that without completely buckling. Which brings us to Section 3, the 5 pillars of infrastructure. These are the 5 non-negotiable technical requirements if you want to scale. Let's translate these into business language. Pillar number 1 is PHP workers. Think of them as your store's digital cashiers. Whenever a customer adds an item to their cart or starts checking out, a PHP worker is assigned exclusively to them until the transaction finishes. If your marketing team sends out a promo email that drives 10,000 visitors and you don't have enough PHP workers, well, you instantly create massive invisible checkout lines. Shoppers get queued, the requests time out, and you lose sales immediately. Generic hosts typically provide just 2 to 6 of these workers. And, that's fine for a small hobby site. But if you are running a high-traffic store in 2026 and you want to process a flash sale without your site crashing, you absolutely require 30 or more dedicated PHP workers. No question about it. Pillar number 2 is object caching. Honestly, this is the highest ROI performance upgrade you can get at the server level. Instead of forcing your database to execute those 150 complex queries from scratch every single time a customer loads a product, object caching uses tech like Redis to store those results right in your server's RAM. This allows your store to retrieve that data in literal microseconds, rescuing your database from repeating the same exhaustive work over and over. Pillar 3 is checkout isolation. So the crucial point is that while caching is absolutely great for product pages, it is disastrous for the checkout process. If you accidentally cache the checkout page, you will literally show the wrong cart to the wrong customer. You might display stale pricing or just completely break the payment gateway integration altogether. A modern hosting environment forces the server to bypass full page caching for all cart and checkout pages, preventing these devastating conversion killers. Pillar 4 is database performance. Specifically, your store needs to be running on modern database software like MySQL 8.0 using the InnoDB storage engine. If you don't do this, you run straight into what's known as the autoload trap. This is when old, uninstalled plugins leave behind over 1 megabyte of autoloaded data that your server then has to load into memory on every single page request. It just quietly chokes your site's speed before a single product image even loads. And the fifth pillar is resource isolation. In business terms, this means protecting your flash sale revenue. By using technologies like CloudLinux LVE, your hosting provider guarantees your store's CPU and RAM are ring-fenced from anyone else on that server. Isolation ensures that your website loads just as fast at noon during peak internet traffic as it does at 2 a.m. Your resources are strictly yours. Let's look at Section 4, the bad neighbor effect. If you don't have that resource isolation we just talked about, sharing server space directly harms your brand. Just look at the 3 threats here. First, CPU drain. A poorly behaved site on your shared server can actually steal your computing power, instantly adding 3 or more seconds to your checkout times. Second, email spam. If you share an IP address with a site that sends spam, your critical order confirmation emails will get flagged as junk by your customers' email providers. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the AI search spot at the bottom. AI engines like ChatGPT and Perplexity are actively evaluating domain trust signals right now. If you're on a shared IP with a bad reputation, these AI engines will skip right over your store when assembling product recommendations for users. You absolutely must secure a dedicated IP to maintain that visibility. Let's look at a direct comparison matrix to see exactly why upgrading your infrastructure makes immediate financial sense. On a generic shared plan, you get maybe 2 to 6 shared PHP workers, absolutely no isolation, and you usually have to pay extra for a dedicated IP. But moving to a specialized environment like AHosting's WooCommerce plan, for example, gets you 15 or more guaranteed workers, CloudLinux resource isolation, and a free dedicated IP. And scaling up to a virtual private server gets you 30-plus dedicated workers and full virtual machine isolation. The ROI on preventing those lost checkouts heavily outweighs the cost of the upgrade. Matt Chrust, Director of Business Development over at AHosting.net, summarizes this perfectly. He says hosting decisions made at the server level determine 80% of a store's performance ceiling before a single plugin is activated. Infrastructure isn't an afterthought, folks. It is the blueprint for your ultimate success. All right, our final section, your 2026 readiness checklist. Let's move to the audit and see how this builds into an actionable checklist you can hand right over to your IT team today. Have your team audit the following uncompromising standards. Ensure you're running PHP 8.1 or higher with at least a 256 megabyte memory limit. Verify you have 10 or more guaranteed PHP workers. Confirm that Redis object caching is active on your server. Check that you have CloudLinux LVE resource isolation in place. And finally, absolutely ensure you have a dedicated IP address to maintain that crucial AI trust signal. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought. If you run that audit and find that your current infrastructure is actively leaking revenue today through slow checkouts, bad neighbor effects, and poor AI visibility, can you really afford to compete in 2026 without making a change? Take this checklist to your team. Check your server health immediately, and make sure your foundation is built for real growth. Thank you for joining this explainer.